But I'm going to ask you, how did
Yeah.
you get into the investigative reporting end of it rather than just straight reporting the news?
Sure. So I started here in Louisville back in 2015. I was right out of college from the University of Missouri, and I knew I wanted to be a reporter, and Louisville gave me the shot. And within a couple of weeks of being here on the job, Crystal Rogers went missing. And so, of course, Crystal Rogers, is a famous, let's just say, high profile case here in Kentucky and a little bit nationally too. Just the idea of the Bardstown cases has gotten a lot of attention. So it was one of the first big cases that I covered. And it was one of the first cases that required me to do more than just show up and report what was happening. There was some legwork involved. I had to start filing records, and appealing to the public records laws to get access to information that I thought was important for the public to know, but that police were not just willing to hand over. So that's kind of where it started, was with Crystal Rogers' case. And then there was a couple of cases after that where one was involving a domestic violence death, where a woman was killed by her estranged husband. And she had asked a prosecutor and a judge to protect her. She had filed an EPO. She had requested a warrant go out for his arrest. And in the good old boy system, the judge was like, no, I know Anthony, he would never do anything to you. But he did. And so that was another one where it was so clear that the people who are put in place to protect you and uphold laws and make the world a better place were failing to do so. And we had to file records to get to the bottom of that case. And that kind of turned me into the investigative journalism, because I felt like there was more of an opportunity to be an advocate and to do some work. I'm paid to pry, to try to find things, and which is such a perfect job for me because I'm so nosy and I want to, I want the behind the scenes of everything. So it's perfect. But that's really how it all started, was just covering a couple of stories that needed more than just show up and report what you see and report what police tell you. You had to go deeper, and you had to not believe everything that police was saying, which is an interesting situation.
Yeah.
Right. Well, do these tips come to you, or did you just say, okay, I see Crystal Rogers, or there's been this murder that looks intriguing in Bardstown, or this other instance, do you search them out, or, do you get those phone calls? I think you ought to look into, George so-and-so down the street.
I would say it started out with the cases happening. Crystal Rogers, for example, it happened. And then when I was in town, people in Bardstown kept saying, there is more to this. This is very suspicious. Her boyfriend is not helping her search for her. Doesn't that seem odd? And it was people in the area and family members that kept pushing me to look further and ask for more. In the case of the domestic violence woman, there was a newspaper article written, but it seemed so vague. And in that one, it seemed like there was something missing. So I went up. That happened in Madison, Indiana. So I went up there and started talking to people there, and it was the same thing. People were like, "Oh, she had filed an EPO. She had asked for help and she didn't get it." And so that's kind of how it started, was me just going to report on them like I would any assignment, and then kind of getting pushed by people there to ask more questions. I would say now that I've gained more of a reputation for it, now people call me directly and ask me to look into something or point out that this doesn't look right.
Shay, when you're doing some sort of investigation, let's say the Bardstown case, for example, do you come across information that you feel like you can't share publicly because it might impact the case, whether the police have asked you to withhold it or not?
Absolutely. Yes. All the time. And oftentimes police and FBI will tell me things so that I'll stop asking and I'll stop talking about it on
Okay.
Facebook Live. And they'll say, this is, yes, we have this. Yes, we found this. Yes, we're working that. Can you please stop? We don't want the bad guys to know that we've got that. So definitely there's moments where they do ask us they tell us and they ask us to hold it back from the public. And it's kind of, we use our discretion on if we think that that's fair. And usually I do. For me, it just isn't worth it to harm the investigation,
Okay.
especially in the when the FBI is involved. I'm very trusting of them. And so when they give us information, which they do often, and they give it to us off the record, they don't want us putting it out there at all. And it's usually to make us stop talking about something or stop pushing something.
Would you describe your relationship with the police as good? Does it change depending on changes?
I would say it changes. It's department to department, and it changes. I think with the FBI, I have a pretty good working relationship because I've never investigated their work directly. So I've investigated cases that they are investigating, but I haven't investigated their work. As compared to the Louisville Metro Police Department, where I've investigated their work, and I've published investigations where I think that they've failed people. They've lost evidence. They have failed to complete testing that should have been done on the night of a crime. And so I've publicly outed them for mistakes. And so my relationship with them is not great, where they only answer me if they have to.
Right.
So yeah, they would not call me with anything. The FBI is better because I haven't investigated them directly, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. It makes this kind of sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
It seems like emergency protective orders, even when they are properly taken out, can only do so much. Because if someone is really determined to kill somebody, they can or they will.
You're absolutely right.
And that's years ago, Shay, before you came to Louisville, there was a young woman I remember who was in the JCPenney's parking lot at St. Matthew's Mall. And she was, I think, gunned down by a boyfriend. And she had an EPO. She had done all the proper things, but yet it didn't prevent him from going after her.
And I think that case, wasn't that case the one that launched the Vine system, the Vine notification
Yes,
system?
it was.
Yeah.
As he had gotten out of jail and she had no
didn't
clue
know.
that he had gotten out.
Yeah. So,
It is such a breakdown. We talk about it all the time when someone's killed and then we find out that they had EPOs out against the alleged murderer. It's devastating because, they did what they thought they could to protect themselves.
right.
But it's terribly difficult to enforce. Oftentimes there has to be some sort of record. Someone can't just call and say, oh, this person, was waiting outside for me, or this person, called me and they weren't supposed to. They want evidence of it.
Right.
It's hard to achieve, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right.
If you do get it, it's just a piece of paper.
Right.
Yeah, it's discouraging, but so you must be very, very good because to get a job in this crazy market right out of college, you must be very talented, Shay, to have been able to pull that off because, boy, the market for journalists has just been shrinking.
I think I got lucky. I really got lucky. There was a recruiter for the company that owns WHAS came to our school and he went to lunch with a bunch of different people and we really connected. And he actually worked at the time in Austin, Texas, and I'm from Texas originally. So I was interested in Austin, but he didn't have a job opening. But he wanted to keep me in the company. And so he really fought to get me in the company. And this was the opening.
Right.
So I just got lucky, really, to get here.
Yeah, well, Missouri too, isn't this one of the premier journalism programs in the
That's
country?
what they say.
Yeah,
That's what they say.
and you had to be good to get in the first place, so,
But
yeah.
this has been an incredible market to work in because we have had huge, breaking news here that I've covered.
We're good for crime.
There is a lot of crime.
Yeah, we
a
make
lot
the
of
national
crime.
news on a regular basis,
Right.
Yeah,
right.
unfortunately.
unfortunately.
I know it, but it's been a good, I've learned, that's why it's kind of unusual to start somewhere and still be there 7 years later. But I feel like I've gotten new opportunity after new opportunity here. And I love the city, so I've had no reason to go.
Mhm.
Right, that's great. That's
Yeah.
So what about this? I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Elaine.
You're a writing group. Let me ask you, do you have a book in you?
Do I have a book?
Do you have a book in you that you're going to write about all these investigative reports? And I'm, obviously the one that, has risen to the top is if they ever do come up with something about Crystal Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have your notes already ready just to, whoop, there we go.
It's funny you asked that. I've been reached out I've been reached out to by, real writers who ask to partner up to, I give them the story and then they'll write it into a book, I guess. I'm not really sure how it works. But it doesn't feel like it's the right, it doesn't feel like it's the right time until to even consider anything, like you said, until the end of these cases.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I get reached out to by people, and I really don't know how it works.
Do you think, unless you feel like you can't say, do you think they will resolve the Crystal Rogers case?
I really do. And the FBI has said that too. I don't know that they'll find her. I don't know that they'll find a body, but I think they will be able to make an arrest and give some sort of information onto how it happened based off of that arrest. But I think they've said before, they give it about a 20% chance of recovering a body.
Especially after this length of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's rumors, and it really is just rumors and conspiracy that she was fed to pigs. But I think that if that was the case, it'll be really difficult to ever find that,
Right.
truly.
Yeah.
That is why feeding to pigs is one of the best ways to dispose of a body.
Yeah, my husband grew
Think
up
about it
on a
that way.
pig farm. Actually, my husband grew up on a pig farm when he was a little kid. It was actually owned in the 70s by the mob. And they kept the pigs because the pigs covered up the smell of the moonshine they were making back during Prohibition.
Wow.
And it's known for a fact that a pig can eat a whole body, bones and all, in like 7 minutes.
Well, now we know
No
what
remains
happened to Jimmy
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, he may be on that pig farm.
Jay, I have a question. If you read mystery or if you watch television shows with mystery, what are the kind of things that just really make you roll your eyes where you're like, that would never happen?
I think the most obvious one is when you watch shows like CSI and they have this database that is just the all-encompassing database of everything. It is the database of all fingerprints and all DNA and everything, and all missing persons and all possible people. And that is just not, that is not in existence. You're only in the system if you've been arrested, for one thing. Fingerprints, every person is not in the system, for number one. Number two is DNA testing is so finicky, and it's made to seem like if you get DNA, you're good. DNA, if you get DNA, you're going to solve this. But that's the same way. You have to have the matching sample, which can be so rare, especially when you're talking about a missing person. And even when you get the matching sample, it's a 12 at a minimum 12-week process.
Mhm.
It's just that I think it's maybe the time is always so sped up,
Okay.
you know, in TV shows. It really, and it's such a grueling process for the family and for
Yeah.
the community, for everyone. If you remember when they found those remains last summer in Nelson County, and it was right when the FBI announced they were taking over the Crystal Rogers case. And it seemed so obvious that these were going to be Crystal Rogers. But it took them like 3 months to come up with the fact that they weren't Crystal Rogers. And that's because the skeleton had decomposed so extremely based on Kentucky weather patterns, which are some of the most prime for fast decomposure. I didn't know if you guys knew that. They
No.
talk about the extreme heats and the extreme cools. Bodies just decompose at a much faster rate. And the moisture, I talked to a forensic anthropologist who worked here for a long time, and now she works for the, for CODIS.
Mhm.
And she talked about that all the time as the chief medical examiner, how when remains would be discovered in Kentucky, if it was any more than 5 days, they would be mostly decomposed.
Wow.
It just goes so quick. And in the summer, it is so quick,
Yeah.
even quicker. But when they found these skeletal remains, they were right by a river. So they were by, they weren't in the river, they were on the bank though.
Mhm.
So tons of water,
Yeah.
tons of moisture, very hot, very cold. And the skeleton was in, I say such bad shape, just decomposed so much that even using the greatest technology in Quantico at the FBI's main evidence lab, they could not get a usable sample of DNA for 3 months. And they were peeling layers of bone back like a mummy. Like so they would scrape a layer of bone back, test, and they couldn't get it. And then scrape another layer and test and couldn't get it. And that's kind of the reality. It's
Did
just,
he ever ID her?
they weren't able to because she's not in CODIS.
The body, the person, the deceased?
Yes.
Wow.
So for either the family members of that person never entered her into CODIS, which it would have to be. Police usually don't do that on their own. You know, they do it at the request of the family, who then provides, you know, if it was my mom, I would provide my DNA
Ah,
to be, you know, I'm forgetting the word of the comparable match, but that has to be there for them to make an ID, and that person is not in CODIS. And so there is no way to know who they are.
Yeah.
Now, what is CODIS, Shay? When you say CODIS?
CODIS, there's a few different ones, but CODIS is one of the biggest databases for missing and unidentified remains.
Okay.
And it's both ways. So they'll put in, police agencies will put in unidentified remains, and then families will put in missing people.
Okay. Okay.
And so you can sometimes get a match.
Yeah.
But not always. And like in this case, you know, nobody has more resources than the FBI, you know, than the federal government, and they could not get a match here.
Yeah.
That's common.
Mhm.
What are the because you've in your discussion so far, you've rattled off so many things that require, at least if you're going to write about it, some degree of knowledge or at least familiarity, like the forensics, the decomposing of the body, doing a FOIA to get records. How much have you had to learn being an investigative journalist versus what maybe you learned in journalism school? Does that cover some of those kinds of, you know, if you're going to investigate things, here's how to get public records, here's whatever? I'm just curious.
We learned, I would say, on a surface level about open records laws and what kind of information police and other officials are legally obligated to give us.
Mhm.
But state by state laws are different. So, you know, what even, you know, what challenges me is I work in Kentucky and Indiana, and even Kentucky and Indiana laws are different. In Kentucky, if I send an open records request, they have to tell me within 3 days that they have received it and when they plan to fulfill it. In Indiana, they have 12 days to tell me that they've received it and then another 5 days to tell me when they plan to fulfill it.
Wow.
And, you know, the Attorney General in Indiana very rarely overrules an appeal. If police say they don't want to give it to us, the Indiana Attorney General is all usually sides with police. In Kentucky, we have better luck.
Mhm.
It's with the Attorney General deciding to release the records.
Mm.
So even state by state, it's very different. So we learned on a surface level in school what we should be able to get and how we should be able to get it. And then it's definitely been a learning process since I've gotten this role. On the other things, you know, the real, the things relating to remains and decomposure and things like that, that has all been on the job knowledge and really just talking to experts in the field. This woman, and she actually would probably be fascinating for you guys to talk to. Her name is Emily, and I'm blanking on her last name, but I'll find it for you. And she is the longtime medical examiner in Kentucky who now works with CODIS.
Mm.
She wrote a book about identifying bodies.
Yes.
Same one, and I can't think of her name.
I know her first name is Emily, and I can look her up and send her to you guys, but she has taught me everything I know about decomposure, about remains, about how they search for jewelry and clothing. And I mean, everything I know about that has come from her mostly. And she's great. I haven't done a story with her in 5 years, but when I have a question, and I called her about this Crystal Rogers thing, just trying to get about the remains that were discovered, trying to get an idea of how long it would take for them to find a match and how long it would take for them to recover them. And I showed her pictures of the hole where they were recovered. And she was able to tell me, it looks like they got a full skeletal, you know, that will help for this. You know, she's just was really useful at filling in gaps.
Mhm.
Just a wealth of knowledge.
That would be very nice if you could give me her information. That would be.
Yeah,
she would
absolutely.
be a very interesting speaker.
What
you know.
about Joanne Farmer, Elaine, the coroner? Remember?
She's an assistant coroner. She's not the, but yeah, she has she did a couple programs at the library.
Right.
And showed slides with, if you had a weak stomach, you did not want to attend.
Right.
We talked about it, very empathetic with the families and you know, with the victims and stuff. Very, very nice. But I had reached out to her a long time ago, and they're just maybe so stacked up with bodies. She never got back to me, but
They are overwhelmed. We know that right now.
Yeah.
Mostly with ODs. That's the big issue for coroners right now.
okay.
Overdoses.
Yeah, overdoses is especially bad. I know in Kentucky, we're having some of the highest rates of overdoses that we have seen in years.
Yeah.
And fentanyl is mainly to blame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shay, are there any leads that you've heard about at all about the shooting of the young man at the bus stop last week in Louisville? I know that actually hit the national news.
What we've gathered on that, just from talking to people in neighborhoods, and not something that we've put on the news because we don't know how helpful it is, but is that the shooter was intending to send a warning to one of the girls who got hit, but she survived, to her brother.
Oh,
So,
Oh, good Lord.
so they were trying to send a message to someone else through, you know, shooting at the younger sister of that person. And she survived. And then another boy got hit, he survived. And then of course, Tyree Smith, who got hit and killed, did not survive. But it's our understanding he did not have anything to do with all of that, which is, of course, it's devastating either way, but especially sad. I mean, and what we've pieced together on him is he got to the school bus at 6 a.m. He went to school, he got off the school bus and went to his part-time job at McDonald's. And then his dad picked him up at 10 o'clock at night and took him home.
Yeah.
Poor
And
soul.
so.
He was supposed to be a very nice young man.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just tragic, really tragic.
Yeah, that one is so sad, and it's so high profile, and so you want to think that they're going to be able to figure it out, but like so many of these, they don't. And especially with the car, you know, their one piece of evidence that they released it was stolen and it was lit on fire, which means any kind of usable DNA, if there was some, got destroyed.
Yeah.
Right. Right, it's really tragic.
Yeah.
Is gang-related violence something that that you would say is in the background of all of these shootings? It seems like every single day, if not twice or 3 times a day, there's a report so-and-so has been shot here or so. Do you think it's gang and drug related with that, or is it just?
Yeah, when I talked to the Commonwealth Attorney's Office about it a couple of months ago, they said that gangs are at the back of it, an underlying factor. But pardon me, what's really made it get so big this year has been retaliation and social media. So people talking really big on social media and handing out threats on social media in a way, and they say it's happening more than they've ever seen it before. And people are retaliating more than they've ever seen before. And that's why so many innocent people are getting hurt, which is sad. I mean, they said this year they've seen more innocent people who were not the intended target be killed than they have before.
Mhm. It's just
So that's,
terrible.
yeah, that one's sad.
Mhm. Mhm.
Define gangs. Are we talking cartel or are we talking little local, I shouldn't say little, but local organizations?
So we have both in Louisville. We have pieces of national organized crime and we have smaller local organized crime. But the way that the city and law enforcement define gang is when a group of people work in conjunction to commit illegal activity. So that's what defines a gang by our law enforcement standards. And we do have smaller local gangs. There's gangs, based off of Market Street in West Louisville and in the Shawnee neighborhood. But then there are also pieces of large scale national gangs that you would recognize the names of. And they don't always go by those names. Sometimes they have, they switch to a more local branch, but we definitely have both in Louisville.
I've done a lot of research about organized crime and and from what I've learned or heard, it seems that big organized crime is lending instead of being more like the traditional mobsters we've heard of in the past, they're lending more into enlisting those local gangs to become participants in their organization as a way to play out their crimes. Is that what you're seeing?
Interesting. Well, that would make sense. The last time that I talked to the Commonwealth's attorney about it, and we talked to the ATF about it a little bit too. And they said that that we certainly have those national gangs here on a local level. They didn't really explain that exact trajectory that national gangs were enlisting local people, but I suppose that could be the case. We know that they're equal in prevalence, the local gangs and then national gangs kind of with a local chapter.
Yeah, mostly what I was investigating particularly was around human trafficking and trafficking of drugs. And it seems like there's been a lot of national information about that enlisting of those, because they're already a structure in place. It's easy to infiltrate and then use them as part of their organization.
That makes perfect sense. And in a city like Louisville, where we have these, the key events, it's always Derby and the Farm and Machinery Show are the two biggest ones for human trafficking.
Yeah, and we're kind of in the tri-state area. We're kind of centrally located. We have the I-75 corridor. We have the east-west corridors are so prevalent, and there's so much shipping and industry that happens through around anywhere from like Memphis, Nashville, Columbus, Cincinnati, Indianapolis.
Right.
So we're like prime
we
locations.
definitely are unfortunately a little bit of a hot spot, especially on those particular events.
Mhm.
And it's crazy. It's so right under the nose. You know,
Yes.
you can always see in the Shively area where the strip clubs all, you know, put their big signs up that are, you know, welcome farmers and welcome derby goers, you know, and you can tell, you know, what's about to happen there.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
What was your most surprising case that you covered?
Surprising. That's a good question.
Thanks.
It's difficult because so many of my cases have not come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard. I mean, I guess I would say the Bardstown case, it seems a little bit unreal to have, you know, 4 high profile, really scary targeted killings,
Mhm.
5 victims in this small, you know, rural town based around agriculture.
Right.
I think
Are
that
you talking about one of the cases being the police officer or state police? I don't remember who was shot on the freeway.
yes. Yes, there was an ambushed police officer. He was on his way home from work, you know, pulled off the exit ramp and there was tree limbs on the ramp. And so he got out of his car to move the tree limbs and was ambushed on the highway on that spot. And 1 year later, there was a mother and she was a special needs teacher and her daughter getting home from school one day and they were both tortured and killed inside their home. 1 year later, Crystal Rogers went missing. And then 1 year after that, her dad was shot and killed, made to look like a hunting accident.
Ballard, yeah.
Yeah.
I have relatives down in Bardstown, so
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the murder capital of the world, we call it now. I
I
can
think-
remember when they never locked their doors, and now everybody locks their
I
doors.
bet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They-
it is a different, I mean, it is crazy. And if you go down there, you know, it's called America's most beautiful small town. And it still looks like that, except for the fact that there are signs everywhere that say, you know, justice for those murdered, find Crystal, bring Crystal home, answer Tommy's prayers. I mean, there's all these yard signs everywhere and in every shop window. So while you are in the most beautiful small town in America, you certainly feel this looming, you know, what's going on here.
Yeah.
A lot of people down there suspect that it is all intertwined with drug trade.
Right.
Yeah. That's
Right.
because Ellis wasn't investigating a lot of drug trafficking down there.
Yeah, he was just recently into their drug unit. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Mhm.
There's a lot of theories about how they could all be connected, you know, the possible, how one could link to the other, with the exception of the mother and daughter. That one is more difficult to tie to the others.
I have heard, and again, rumor has it, that the daughter used to babysit for Ellis and stumbled upon something.
We've heard that one too. And it's interesting because the family, they're the Netherlands, and the Netherlands family has always been really, really steadfast that there is no tie between their family's murders and the other ones. And they also have been much quieter than the other families. So we didn't know if maybe they just want to separate them just to get out of the cluster of national attention on the Bardstown cases.
Mhm.
But
It
they have
happened
all,
on the prom night too, didn't it? They
It
say we're
it
getting ready for
happened
the prom.
right before the prom. Yeah, I think the
Right.
prom might
So
have been that
I
weekend.
wondered if something like that, you know, something about the prom, somebody was mad, you know, retaliatory thing with the prom.
Yeah, there's been, you know, one of the conspiracies that I hear all the time was that another family member, possibly the sister, was involved. Their
Mhm.
father had just died from cancer the year before and left behind life insurance money. And mom, you know, kept that money and said, you know, we're gonna have to live on this, all of us, you know, for a while. And there's talk that upset the oldest daughter who was off in college, that she wanted
Yeah.
mom to split the money, you know,
Uh-huh.
between the 3 of them, and she wanted her money to do what she wanted to do with. And so there's discussion about what could have possibly, if that could have possibly led to more. But when we ask police about it, they say that she has always cooperated. She's been interviewed. She they've had no reason to call her a suspect.
But if you're cooperating, you got what you wanted in the end anyway, so.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
odd that they were tortured versus the rest of the crimes. So
So
It
that
is,
could be
and-
anger, anger, it makes it more
It's-
personal.
Definitely
Yeah.
a crime of passion when there's torture in the way they were.
either that or they wanted something out of them, something they knew. They wanted information so they could find whatever, drugs, money, whatever.
Mhm.
Those are usually the reasons people are tortured. They want something, or else they're passionately want to torture that person for some personal reason.
That's a good point.
Hard
Yeah.
to understand people who would torture a child. Wasn't there a special needs child involved?
The mom was a special needs teacher.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's
But I
really
can
Um,
see a sister attacking a sister easily.
Never had any
Glad I don't
sisters, so
have
I
any
was
sisters.
I'm in good relationship with my sister, thank you.
Just for the record, since this is being recorded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
being recorded. I love my sister.
I'm curious about 23andMe, the where you can kind of find out your history through your submitting your DNA,
Yeah.
and how some of these cold cases have been solved with getting this information from 23andMe, which of course,
Well, you
is
know
odd.
about, the big ones, right? Out of California and
Yes.
Golden State Killer and some of those,
Yes.
which are just incredible. We haven't seen any like that here.
Okay.
But I did just do an investigation in the last couple of weeks using ancestry.com regarding a doctor and fertility fraud. And a woman had put her DNA into ancestry.com, and she knew that her mom used a sperm donor. She was 45 years old,
Uh-huh.
and she's always known that her mom used a donor. And her parents had some infertility. But when she put in her DNA, she saw that she had 7 half siblings, and which is usually they cap, they try not to have one donor with too many in the same area, just so there's no chance of anybody meeting on accident, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, one of the children, one of her half siblings had the same last name as her mother's doctor. And so her doctor went, and her mom called U of L, which is where he was working as a professor in fertility at the time. And she, sent something to the medical licensure board, and he admitted to it and just said that at that time he did not have any frozen sperm or donors available. So he did use his own. And there's no law against it in Kentucky, which is what our story was
Really?
about.
Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't surprise me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's these DNA sites are being used in other things too, beyond, criminal cold cases, but other ways where you kind of don't expect it to reveal criminal activity, or in this case, it's not illegal, but people think it should be.
Right.
I'm on ancestry.com, and I did DNA, and my daughter says, "Don't do that." I said, "What? You planning on murdering someone?"
Yeah. Right. They're definitely, you get yourself on the record.
Right.
Yeah.
I've
when you
found a
do
lot of
it.
relatives that way.
Yeah, we've heard of local smaller police departments trying to get grant money to use those DNA and genealogy sites in an attempt to identify missing people or remains. And excuse me, it's still so new and fresh, they have difficulty doing it, but there are small Kentucky towns that are working on it, getting the
There was
grant
this-
money.
There was a show on TV, last year, and she was a genealogist. She did this for families, and the police went to her, and she was able to narrow down where these criminals were at, like this
Wow.
cold case that they had, and they found the DNA. And then if she found him, on one of these gene sites, and that he lived within a mile of her. And so the police could go in and look for clues, because now they had a direction to move in, and made an arrest. It was just really, really
That's
fascinating.
incredible. Yeah, I know it's a big point, for some of the cold cases that we've covered. They always hope that they're going to be able to use some sort of genealogy or DNA site. But it's difficult.
Yeah.
The cold cases are always the hardest ones. And I
My
feel for
daughter
those
was worried
officers.
that I would be accused falsely of murder because of a mistake with DNA or something. I said, your imagination needs to tone down just a little.
You never know, right? You never know.
I guess.
I wouldn't do it.
I really wanted to find out about my ancestry. I wanted to know where this hair came from.
That is
Nobody
a
else.
really
My mother
cool part
said
of
I
it.
was the mailman's daughter, because there's only one. They couldn't tell me where the red hair came from. So
Wow.
I was quite curious.
Yeah, there's some interesting discoveries made on there. I did the
Oh,
DNA for my dog.
Oh my gosh,
which
did
was
I
interesting.
discover
For your
I
dog?
discovered skeletons in the closet that I called my brother and I said, you will not guess.
Oh my goodness.
Our grandfather's first wife did not die in the Spanish flu. She ran off with a gypsy.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, yes, I have a half uncle. Well, he died just recently, so I guess I have a half cousin wandering around, doesn't know about me. And I've never told my mother's side of the family about this either. My brother goes, I will die with this information.
That is so crazy.
It is crazy. I was like, and he wrote a book too. He was like a famous race car driver. And I was just like,
Wow.
mind blown. I just wanted to find
Wow.
out who I was related to. And it just fell into all this.
Right.
Wow.
That is so crazy.
It is crazy.
So when you guys have speakers, are you looking to kind of more make the stories as real as possible or as accurate as possible?
Yes, yes.
That's excellent.
Right.
Because most mystery readers, or a lot of the mystery readers, are very well educated in that field, we were talking about one of our former members is an ATF or retired ATF, and he gives instructions on handguns and the proper terminology and stuff like that. Because I've heard from other, I don't put guns in mine because I don't know anything, but other authors have told me, so and so opened a book and saw that it was supposed to be not a revolver but a pistol, and immediately I got 14,000 emails saying this isn't working, or that isn't right, and and they'll let you know if you didn't get it. So we try, and it doesn't always work that we get a speaker who gives us enough information. But what you've told us is really interesting about, filing the forms and then, talking out of the side of your mouth to the FBI and,
Right. Right. Yeah, it is an interesting game, and we walk a lot of lines, to try to, you don't want to be friends with the police because it's not your job.
right.
And especially, I think the most important part of my job is accountability. Journalists are just put in the perfect position to challenge authority and expose people in power when they're misusing it. I think that's our greatest responsibility and the most important thing we can do. So if you're friends with these people in power, it really makes that difficult. Though you have to have a working relationship to get the information sometimes. So it's an interesting line you have to walk. And I've only been put into one position where I felt really bad, where I was friends with someone and had to still, something came up and something was wrong and I had to do the story. But it just happens.
Yeah.
You ever been put into a position where they want something from you, so they're willing to give you something you want, in order to get you to help them in some way by publishing a
Yeah.
piece of something, a story? or what?
Kind of. I mean, I feel like the FBI knows exactly how to use the media to their advantage. And I think they specifically know how far my reach is on this case. And so they'll send me things I think that they want specific people to see. But typically it's also good information that I know everyone's interested in.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever been placed in a position where someone was asking for something that was, you know, and I don't want to say an inappropriate exchange, but, you know, maybe, I don't think I've ever been put in like that kind of compromising, am I going to do this for this situation? But, and police, I think are worried too, you know, if they offer that to the wrong person, you know, or they say the wrong thing and the wrong information gets out, or,
Yeah.
you know, it's difficult. They usually don't, you know, they want to build a relationship with you and know that they can tell you things off the record and you really will keep it off the record.
That makes
So
sense.
it's interesting. He said sometimes they'll tell you things they want to be seen. And do you mean, if you can say again, that it's not so much they want the general public to see this, but they might want the perpetrator to know that they know something?
I absolutely believe that. And most recently, when they were searching in Bardstown last month, I guess 2 months ago now, I felt like we were seeing that all the time, where they would tell me that they had found items of interest and that they were getting closer to, you know, getting some important piece of information, and that they were really interested in talking to people who might know something. And so, you know, really that only applies to 1 or maybe 2 people, you know, that might know something here. And so I really felt like they were giving that to me to try to reach those 1 or 2 people. But they definitely feed you what they want you to know. And sometimes we have to be critical of that too. You know, there's been a few times where they've given us something that they want us to put out there, but it doesn't seem like it's serving. For example, if they'll give us a suspect description that's too vague. If they say, you know, a 6-foot white guy with a tattoo on his upper arm with brown hair. And it's, you know, that could be any of our boyfriends or uncles or brothers. Then we don't put that out because it's not helpful. So we have to, you know, and they're very bad at that, at giving too vague of suspect descriptions, and we're not going to put those out because it's not helpful.
Yeah.
So
This
it's
is
interesting.
This is something I've seen at least once on some TV program or movie, where, especially in like a serial killer kind of scenario, where it's like, we want to tweak this guy, so let's put out something about him that they probably don't think is true, but we're gonna tweak him and see if he makes a mistake out of anger at the police. Like, we have done a profile and this guy is like a bedwetter, and publish that, and hopefully that'll make the guy so mad he'll try and kill again, but we'll catch him. You know,
Interesting. I feel like, yeah, they've given us cryptic messages that I know they want people to see, not usually about the suspect directly though, more like, we have found something at this site and we're eager to talk to the person who knows how it got there. Or, you know, we have searched 2 more unnamed sites today that we think are helpful to this case. And they're saying unnamed sites, you know, to make that person wonder if it's the site, you know, if it's a spot that is going to find something. So they're good at playing little games like that too. But for our purposes, you know, people are so hungry for information and they want to know that police are actively working. So it benefits us to put it out too, to show that, you know, we're watching it, we're following it, and police seem to be actively working it.
It sounds like with the Gabby case down in Florida, you know, they
Mhm.
just little bits, but now the parents are starting to crack a bit, and they changed their story about when he was missing, and now it's a date earlier than what they had said earlier. So it's starting to look like they helped him out. That's what it's starting. And
Which
even
is,
they asked the sister, do you think your parents helped him? And she says, I'm not sure. Well, that tells me, yeah, you think they did.
yeah, I know that one's a wild one.
Yeah,
That's another
that
one
one
where
looks
it's,
to me, it looks like that they packed him up in the camper because the neighbors are like, they don't, why is a 23-year-old going with these with these parents on a camping trip? This is, not normal.
it's interesting too, that even that the parents are, well, to me, I can't believe they haven't found him. I cannot believe that he's been able to stay
Yeah,
hidden for this long when there's not one other case with that much attention on it and that many resources being given to it.
well, like Nancy Grace says, they are in on it because mama ain't crying.
Ah, Nancy
I'm
Grace,
the
she's a
same.
good character.
She is a good character. She says, they're in on it, mama ain't crying.
Yeah, she's funny. I've done some interviews with her on some of the different cases we've covered, and she turns it on, when
Yes, she does.
when you're
She tweaks it. Yeah.
Pretty
We'll be
over the
just-
top.
He actually writes
is.
mystery too.
yeah. Well, I'll be talking to her and she'll say, how are you? And how's this? And da 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 da. And we're just talking. And then she's like, okay, you ready? And I'm like, I'm ready. And she's like, okay, hello. Da, 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 completely. I mean, she's the same person, but she elevates it.
Right, right.
Right.
She knows
I
how to
just love it. She
entertain.
goes, mama ain't crying. If it was my child, I'd be out there in one of those airboats shouting from the roof, from the tops, blah, blah, blah. Where are you? Where are you? And you never see her out there pleading with her son to turn himself in.
Yeah, she has the kind of the gift of, she can conspiracy theory with her fans, she can run through all the possibilities in a way that a journalist you just can't do. If I only put it out there if I have it supported by facts, if I have true evidence of it. She'll go wild down all the rabbit holes, which is actually kind of fun to watch her do. Yeah, she's entertaining.
Yes.
It's funny to hear her conspiracies on the cases I cover too, because she'll just run through whatever it could be.
Yeah. How is your working rapport with other investigative reporters from other channels that may be covering the same stories? Do you guys ever sit down for lunch and say, well, did you hear this? Did you hear that? Or
No, but that's a good, we should. We don't. Typically, there's two other people in town that I feel like cover the same stuff as me. And usually I hate it when they get a good get, when they get a good interview or a good piece of evidence, or they checked court on a day where I forgot to check. And I always hate that. Because it is, there's a little bit as a journalist of competition. You want to have the big story, you want to have the big new piece of information. And so we watch what each other does, and we all take turns winning on something, because there really is this level of competition, just even within this little market, where everybody kind of wants to be first, but you have to have the evidence to back it up. You can't ever be first and just with nothing.
Yeah.
And so it stinks when you have it, because the neighbor told you, but you haven't got it confirmed with police, and someone else gets it confirmed with police and they get it out first. That's always a painful couple of minutes.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this has been great.
It's been
really
very
enjoyed
interesting.
this.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. I would love to hear some of the things you've written. If someone could send me a list, I'd love to look into it too.
Oh, that would be great.
Well, we can do that. Yes. Yes.
That would be great. And I'll send you, I'm going to look up the forensic anthropologist that I think could be really interesting for you guys to speak with,
Oh, that'd be
That
wonderful.
would be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
and send you her contact information. She's just fascinating. And I feel like she is eager to share, you know, that's why she takes time with me. She wants to make sure I'm getting it right.
Yeah.
So I think that she would be happy to help writers as well, you know, to just help give it as accurate a depiction as possible.
I found that most experts like that are really willing to help if you just go to them and ask the questions.
Mhm.
Right, right, yeah.
And the FBI has actually, I was just reading something on them too, how they always say, if you're writing about us, you know, if you're including us in your piece or in a movie, you know, we'd be happy to answer your questions on everything from what does the uniform look like to how would we approach this situation.
Oh, nice.
So they always talk about being really open. I think the same way, you know, they just want to be depicted accurately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, that could be another one.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll look into, I'll look into that. Well, I'm going to say thank you one more time. I'm going to send you a gift card for our speakers. Can I just send it to WHAS?
Oh, sure. You absolutely don't have to do that though. I've enjoyed it. It really has been fun.
Well,
Thank you
then,
guys for having me.
something, well, you can then go out and buy our books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, I'm serious. I would love to see a list of these so I can find them.
Okay.
After hearing from all of you, it'd be so fun to read what you've written.
Wonderful.
I'd really enjoy it. Thank you guys so much. If there's anything I can
Thank
ever
you.
help with, or if you come up with any journalist specific questions, feel free to shoot them my way. Any way
Will
I can
do.
help.
Thank